So, my grandfather left me his vintage Mustang, the one we spent 10 years restoring together. It wasn't just a car, it was a bond, a connection to him. My brother, though, my golden child brother, suddenly decided that he needed the car for college. Like, of course he did. And when he demanded it, my parents, without hesitation, took it from my driveway while I was at work. They thought I'd just give it up, but I didn't. I wasn't about to just hand it over. Instead, I reported it stolen. And that's when the real story began. It wasn't until I pulled up to my house after work that I noticed something wasn't right. The driveway was empty. My Mustang, the one I'd spent so many hours on, turning it from a rusted shell into the car that Grandpa had always dreamed of, wasn't there. It wasn't just the car that was gone. It felt like a part of me had been ripped away too. The silence hit me first. You ever stand in a place where everything is still, so still that you can hear the weight of your own heartbeat in your ears, the kind of silence that cuts through you like a knife? That's how it felt. The air was thick with it. The Mustang was always there, parked just where I left it, waiting for me to take it for a spin, to keep working on it, or just sit in it for a while, listening to the engine hum. But now, it was gone. I stood there for what felt like forever, staring at the empty space where it should have been. My boots felt heavy on the concrete, like I was walking through water. My hands were shaking. Not because I was scared, but because of the shock, the disbelief, and something else too, anger, deep and cold, rolling up from my stomach. I felt it in the pit of my gut, sour and raw. It wasn't just the car. It wasn't about the metal or the paint or the engine. It was about everything it represented. The Mustang was a piece of my past, my connection to Grandpa. It was the one thing that made sense in this messed up family of mine. The one thing that wasn't broken or distorted. And now it was gone. As my mind tried to wrap itself around the idea that it had been taken, I couldn't help but think about the kind of person who would do something like this. A thief. Right? A thief would have taken the Lexus parked next door. The one with the shiny new paint job and the fancy wheels. A car that didn't have a clutch that needed a special touch to get going. The Lexus was easy. It was newer, worth more. And honestly, it was probably easier to sell. But not my Mustang. No one else knew how to drive it like I did. The clutch, the gear shift, the engine that purrs when you get it just right. No. A thief wouldn't know how to handle that car. Not unless they were a professional. And if a professional was involved, they wouldn't take the time to carefully park it back in the driveway when they were done. I knew then. I knew exactly who had taken it. It wasn't some random thief off the street. This was personal. My heart started to race as a cold wave of anger crashed over me. I dropped my bag on the pavement. The sound of the tools inside clanking together like a reminder that I couldn't fix this with a wrench or a ratchet. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking. But not from fear, more like from the building rage that had started to bubble up. I wasn't scared. I was furious. I dialed the number I knew by heart, the house I grew up in. It rang 4 times before my father, Roman, picked up. "Hello, Riley," he said. His voice was casual, way too casual, like we were talking about the weather or a TV show we'd watched. But I knew better. I could feel it in my bones. He was pretending everything was fine, pretending like nothing had happened. But I knew. "Where is it?" I asked. My voice surprising me with how steady it sounded. It didn't crack or waver. I was mad, but I didn't want to yell. I just needed him to admit what I already knew. "Where is what?" he asked. I could hear the clink of silverware in the background, the sound of him trying to keep up the normal routine while everything around him was falling apart. My stomach churned. The normalcy of it made me want to scream. "The Mustang," I said, closing my eyes. "The car Grandpa gave me, the one that's titled in my name, it's gone." I paused. "Tell me you didn't do what I think you did." There was a pause on the other end of the line. The silence was heavy, like he was trying to figure out how to respond without completely lying. I could practically hear him exchanging a look with my mom, Maria. Then, a sigh. It was the kind of sigh he used when he was about to make some excuse, like I was a little kid asking too many questions. "Riley, listen to me," Roman said, his tone shifting to that smooth, practiced pitch, the one he always used when he was selling something. I could hear the slickness in his voice. "We didn't want to make a big scene out of this. Kyle left for campus this afternoon. He needed reliable transportation." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. "We made an executive decision as a family." My jaw tightened. "You stole my car," I whispered, the words barely leaving my mouth. "We reallocated a family asset," he corrected sharply. "Kyle is going to a prestigious university. He needs to make a certain impression. That car fits the image he needs. You have your truck for work. You don't need the Mustang. You just like having it. There's a difference." I felt like I was being suffocated, like the air had suddenly turned thick. "It's not a family asset," I ground out, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's mine. Grandpa left it to me." "Oh, stop with the legal nonsense," Roman snapped, his patience wearing thin. "We are your parents. We know what's best. Kyle will bring it back during semester breaks. Stop being selfish and support your brother's future for once. We're done discussing this." And then the line went dead. I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest, staring at the black screen of my phone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe how casually he'd said it, how easily he justified what they had done. It wasn't just the car. It was everything they had taken from me. My grandfather's memory, my rights, my identity. They didn't just steal a car, they stole a part of me. A part of me that I wasn't going to give up so easily. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone. I just stood there in the darkness of the evening, the cool wind biting through my coveralls, and tried to breathe. But it felt like I couldn't catch my breath. My hands were shaking again, not from fear, but from the adrenaline starting to pump through my veins. The betrayal was worse than anything I had imagined. They didn't just take a car, they took everything. I walked into my small rental house, the silence inside amplifying the ringing in my ears. I didn't know what to do. I went to the kitchen sink and splashed cold water on my face, trying to wash away the feeling of helplessness that had settled in my chest. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. But they thought it was. Roman and Maria, and by extension Kyle, thought they had already won. They thought they had cornered me, that I would just play along like I always did. But they didn't know me anymore. I wasn't the same person I was a few years ago. I wasn't the quiet, obedient daughter who just accepted everything they threw at her. Not anymore. I was done playing by their rules. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, in the quiet of the kitchen, staring at the cold water dripping from my hands. And I made a decision. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I stood there, staring at the phone screen after the call with my dad had ended. The silence was deafening, louder than any shout or scream could ever be. My mind was racing, my heart hammering in my chest, and yet I couldn't bring myself to move. It was like I was paralyzed, frozen in time by the sheer weight of what had just happened. They had taken the car, my car, and he had just casually told me that it was reallocated, like it was some family asset, like it wasn't mine at all. I gritted my teeth, clenching my fists until the knuckles turned white. This wasn't just a theft, it was an erasure, an attempt to rewrite the entire history of that car and of me. I wasn't going to let it slide. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Not after everything I'd put into that car. Not after everything my grandfather had invested in me. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone again, dialing my dad's number, my hands still shaking. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. "Riley, what's the matter now?" My father's voice was still casual, too casual, like he hadn't just crossed a line. It felt like he was talking to me like I was some petulant child, someone who would just get over it once the dust settled, like I was being unreasonable. "Where's the Mustang?" I demanded, my voice coming out rougher than I expected. It felt foreign, angry, but steady. I was done asking nicely. "Riley, I told you already. Kyle needed it for college," he said, the same rehearsed tone in his voice. "It was a family decision, honey." I felt my blood boil. "Family decision," I shot back, each word coming out sharp, cutting through the air. "You stole my car, and you call it a family decision. Now, don't get so upset. It's not that big of a deal," he said, like I was the one overreacting. The calmness in his voice felt like a slap in the face. "You don't need it. You have your truck for work. Kyle needs something to make an impression for his future. You can understand that, right?" "I don't need it," I repeated, feeling a strange heat rise in my chest. "You're seriously saying that to me right now?" I could hear the clink of his silverware again, the noise of him, pretending that everything was just fine, as if his daughter wasn't standing there, feeling like her entire world had been taken from her. "It's not just a car, Dad. It's mine. Grandpa left it to me, legally. It's not some asset you can just stop with the legal nonsense, Riley." He interrupted, his voice suddenly sharp. "You're being selfish." The words hit me like a slap across the face, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. "Selfish," I repeated, my voice cracking with disbelief. "I'm selfish because I don't want you stealing what's mine. Kyle is going to a prestigious university. This car fits the image he needs," he continued, his words flowing smoothly, like he was trying to sell me on some real estate deal. "He's going to be successful. You don't need the Mustang. It's not important. This is for Kyle's future." "It's not about Kyle's future," I snapped, my voice rising. "It's about appearances. You're treating it like it's some kind of accessory for his college image. It's not just about the image, Riley. It's about making the right impression, and Kyle needs that car. It'll help him get where he's going," he said, still trying to justify it, but every word out of his mouth made me angrier. "It's not about the car, Dad. It's about what it means to me. It's about what it meant to Grandpa," I said. my voice shaking now. But I wouldn't back down. That car isn't some object to be passed around like it's nothing. It's part of my history. It's part of my connection to him. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, like he didn't understand what I was saying. Like he couldn't comprehend what it meant for me to have that car, to have that memory, to have something to hold on to after Grandpa was gone. Finally, he spoke, but his tone had shifted. It was no longer the calm, soothing voice of a father trying to keep control. Now it was patronizing, like I was the one who didn't understand. Listen, Riley, I know you're upset. I get it, but this is for the family, he said, using that tone again, the one that always made my stomach twist. Kyle needs it more than you. We're just trying to help him. He's the one who needs to make something of himself. You have your truck for work. It's not the same, but you'll be fine. This is about the bigger picture. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, my hands shaking as I gripped the phone tighter. Stop. Just stop, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. This is not about Kyle. This is about you. You're making excuses because you want to make things easier for him. You're not even listening to me. There was another long pause, and then he sighed. Like I was the one being unreasonable. We didn't want to make a big scene about this. Riley, he said, his voice trying to sound smooth again. We were trying to avoid all the drama, but now you're just making this worse. You took my car, Dad. You stole it from me, and now you're telling me it's my fault for being upset. I could feel the frustration boiling over inside me, a wave of anger that had been building up since I first realized what had happened. You took it, you and Mom and Kyle. You didn't think for a second about how it would make me feel. You just decided that Kyle needed it more, and that was the end of it. Look, Riley, my dad said, his voice taking on that smooth, manipulative tone again. We're your parents. We know what's best for you. Kyle is going to be successful. You need to support him. Stop being so selfish. We're done discussing this. And with that, the line went dead. I stood there, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the silence that followed. The anger inside me was bubbling over now. But it wasn't just anger. It was something deeper. Something that felt like betrayal, like my entire life had been flipped upside down. They didn't care about me. They didn't care about what I felt. They only cared about Kyle and what he wanted, and they were willing to take everything from me to make sure he got what he needed. They had taken the car. They had taken the connection to Grandpa. And they had taken something from me that I could never get back. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about the Mustang. It was about everything that had come before it. It was about the years of neglect, of being overlooked, of being the one who was always pushed aside for Kyle. My whole life, I had been the one who wasn't enough. I wasn't athletic enough. I wasn't charming enough. I wasn't the golden child. I was the one who stayed in the background while Kyle got all the attention, all the praise. And now, here I was, standing in my own driveway, watching them take the one thing that was mine, the one thing that made me feel like I mattered. I wasn't going to let this go. Not this time. I wasn't going to play by their rules anymore. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me. This wasn't just about a car. It was about standing up for myself. For the first time in my life, I was done being quiet. I was done letting them decide what was best for me. I picked up the phone again, my fingers trembling as I dialed the number for the police. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was theft, and I was going to make sure they paid for it. After the phone call ended, I felt something shift inside me. The anger was still there, but now there was something else. Something deeper, determination. They weren't going to back down. Roman, Maria, Kyle, they thought they had won. They thought they could take what was mine, take everything, and I would just sit there, silently accepting it, like I always had, but not anymore. I wasn't going to just let them walk all over me. I wasn't going to let them steal my grandfather's legacy, my car, and get away with it. They were going to learn that this time. They couldn't just make decisions for me. They couldn't make me the villain in their little narrative. No. This time, I was in control. I wasn't about to call them again and beg for answers or try to reason with them. That wasn't going to work. It never had. I needed to take action. I needed to find a way to get the Mustang back, and I needed to do it on my terms. I walked into my small rental house, the silence enveloping me like a thick blanket. The house was quiet, too quiet. I could feel the tension in the air, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on me. I walked past the kitchen, past the table where I'd spent so many nights staring at the car's documents, the restoration plans. I was so tired of fighting with my family, so tired of being the one who had to stand up for what was mine. But I knew something had to be done. My hands were still shaking, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from the raw energy that surged through me, the need to take control of the situation. I walked into the living room and sat down at my laptop, the screen flashing to life as I opened a folder I'd kept hidden for just such a moment. Inside were all the files I'd carefully documented over the years. The original title transfer from Grandpa, the registration papers, the insurance policy, all signed, all legitimate. I had kept everything. I needed the car back, and I needed to be ready. I wasn't going to let them say they had reallocated it. I wasn't going to let them rewrite the story. I'd put too much into that car. I'd spent too many hours in the garage with Grandpa. Too many weekends learning the ins and outs of mechanics. Too many nights lying awake, thinking about that Mustang. It wasn't just a car. It was a piece of my history. It was the last thing I had left of him, of the man who had always believed in me when no one else did. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of it all sink in for a moment. My mind was racing, but now it was racing with purpose. I knew what I had to do. I grabbed my phone and opened a specific app, the one I'd set up when I first restored the Mustang. I had installed a GPS tracker in it. It was a small, hidden device tucked away behind the rear seat where no one would ever think to look. I didn't do it because I didn't trust my family. I did it because classic cars are targets. Thieves love them, and the Mustang was no exception. But I didn't just put the tracker in there for safety. I put it in there because I knew that one day, someone might try to take it from me, and I needed to be ready. I pulled up the map on my phone and watched as the little blue dot appeared on the screen, marking the Mustang's location. It was moving. The dot was slowly making its way west, traveling down I-95. I couldn't help but feel a small rush of satisfaction. They thought they had gotten away with it. They thought they had stolen the car and that was the end of it. But they had forgotten one thing. They had forgotten that I was the one who knew how to fix things. I was the one who knew how to dismantle a machine piece by piece and put it back together. And that was exactly what I was going to do. I wasn't just going to take the car back. I was going to make them pay for what they had done. I opened the GPS app and zoomed in on the map, tracking the dot as it moved closer to the state line. Kyle was driving. I could almost picture him behind the wheel, probably grinning like he had won some prize. I wondered if he had any idea what was about to happen. The Mustang was his for the moment, but not for long. I stared at the dot on the map, watching it move steadily down the highway. The plan was simple: get the car back, immobilize it, and make sure they couldn't take it from me again. I wasn't going to let them just drive off into the sunset with my car. The Mustang wasn't some prop to impress his friends. It was a piece of my history, and it wasn't going anywhere. I tapped the screen on my phone and opened the kill switch feature in the app. The kill switch was something I had installed when I had modernized the car's electrical system. It wasn't visible. The wiring was hidden behind the original dashboard, and everything still looked as if it had come straight from 1967, but underneath, it was a different story. The kill switch was designed to disable the car's ignition and fuel system remotely. It wouldn't cut the engine while the car was moving safety first, but the moment it came to a stop and the ignition was turned off, the car would be rendered useless. It would be a 2-ton paperweight, and there was nothing Kyle could do about it. I felt a chill run through me as I looked at the map. The dot was getting closer to a rest area on Route 80, about 60 miles away from where the car had been parked earlier. He was making good time. He was probably speeding, thinking he was invincible, unaware that he was driving a stolen vehicle. I waited for a few more minutes, letting the anticipation build. The Mustang was almost there. I could feel the excitement building inside me, the thrill of finally taking control of the situation. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Not this time. Not when I had the power to stop it. I watched as the dot moved closer and closer to the rest area. And then, finally, it slowed down. He was stopping. I tapped the red button on my phone screen. "Confirm immobilization," it asked. My finger hovered over the button for a moment, and then I tapped yes. The screen flashed. Target disabled. I smiled to myself, the adrenaline rushing through me. It was done. The Mustang wasn't going anywhere. I pulled the phone away from my face and sat back in my chair, my hands still trembling. But now it was different. This time, it was the adrenaline of taking control, of finally doing something about what had been taken from me. I wasn't some passive victim anymore. I wasn't just going to wait for them to come back and apologize. No. This was my fight now. I picked up the phone again, this time dialing the non-emergency police line. I had the location of the car. I had the proof that it was mine. And I had the power to make sure it didn't get away from me again. When the dispatcher picked up, I spoke calmly, my voice steady. "I need to report a grand theft auto," I said. "I have the location of the vehicle, the identity of the suspect, and proof of ownership. I'd like to press charges." As I spoke, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. I had made my move. The car was safe. And it was only a matter of time before Kyle would realize that he wasn't in control anymore, that he wasn't going to get away with what he had done. I wasn't going to let him. I wasn't going to let any of them get away with it. I've spent my entire life feeling like I was the mistake. Kyle was always the golden child from the moment he was born, everything in the family seemed to orbit around him. He was charming, he was athletic, he was everything my parents had dreamed of, everything I wasn't. And that's not some woe is me sob story. It's just how it was. My parents were barely out of their teens when they had me, struggling, unprepared, still figuring things out. By the time Kyle came along 5 years later, things were different. Roman's real estate career had finally taken off. Maria had settled into her role as a school administrator, and they had the kind of life that seemed perfect on the surface. Kyle was their second chance, their miracle child. He was the one they could show off to the world, the one who could do no wrong. Me, I was the one who always seemed to fall short. I wasn't athletic like Kyle. I wasn't charming in the way he was. I was quiet, observant, and I liked to take things apart. Not exactly the kind of traits that make you the favorite in a family like mine. I remember when I was a kid, looking at Kyle and just feeling invisible. He'd break things, like vases or toys, and it was always an accident. But if I broke something, I was clumsy, careless. I could never measure up. And even though I didn't want to admit it, it hurt. It always hurt. It was like I didn't exist in the way Kyle did. Everything was for him. If he wanted pizza, we had pizza. If he had a game, we canceled everything else to go watch him sit on the bench. Kyle was the center of everything. I didn't get that. I wasn't the one who mattered. My grandfather was the only one who ever treated me like I was worth something. He didn't see me as the mistake. He didn't see me as the background character in the family drama. He saw me for who I was. He saw my interest in mechanics, my curiosity about how things worked, and he nurtured that. Grandpa didn't treat me like a girl who should be playing with dolls. He didn't treat me like a disappointment. He treated me like an apprentice. I remember when I was 12, I started spending every weekend at his place, out in his garage, covered in grease, and learning how to use tools. I spent more time with him than I ever did with my parents. While Kyle was off at fancy sports camps that cost thousands of dollars, I was in the garage, learning the difference between a wrench and a ratchet. I didn't mind. I loved it. It was my thing. Grandpa and I spent hours working on that Mustang. It had sat in his barn for years, a rusted shell of its former self. But when I turned 16, Grandpa made me a deal. He said if I helped him restore it, really restore it, not just pay someone else to do it, it would be mine when he was gone. And I did, for 4 years. I lived in that garage. I missed proms. I missed football games. I missed family vacations that were really just celebrations of Kyle's accomplishments. I was never part of that. But I had the Mustang. I had the restoration. I had something that was mine. And when Grandpa passed away, that car was all I had left of him. It wasn't just a vehicle to me. It was everything. It was the place I went to talk to him. It was the place I went to grieve. Roman and Mariah never understood that. To them, the Mustang was just a dollar sign. They didn't get what it meant to me. Grandpa had mentioned a few times that maybe we should sell the car to pay for Kyle's tuition, but I always shut that idea down. I had the title, I had the will, and I wasn't going to let them take that from me too. But the resentment simmered underneath the surface. I could feel it. Roman didn't care about the car in the same way I did. He saw it as a classic asset, something to be sold when the time was right. It was a commodity to him, a piece of property that could be liquidated for cash. I remember when Kyle came by my place a week ago. He walked around the Mustang, kicking the tires like he was inspecting it. "You know, Rye," he said, leaning against the door in that casual way of his. "This car is wasted on you. You just drive it to work and back. Imagine me rolling up to the freshman mixer in this. It's a panty dropper for sure." He didn't even realize how much he was mocking it, mocking everything it meant to me. He had no respect for the labor, the history, or the love that went into the car. To him, it was just a prop, a shiny object that would make him look cool. When he said that, I snapped at him. "Don't call it that. It's not yours. It never will be." But he didn't care. He kept pushing. "Mom and Dad think it's unfair," he whined. "I'm going away. I need a car. You have your truck. We're family. You should want to help me." And that was the moment I knew he was dangerous. Not in the physical sense, but emotionally. He didn't understand the connection I had with that car. He didn't care. It was just a tool for him, a means to an end. It wasn't about the car. It wasn't about Grandpa. And it wasn't about me. It was all about what he wanted. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't let him have it. I knew that if I let him take the Mustang, I would lose more than just a car. I would lose everything I had left of Grandpa. I'd lose the one thing that was truly mine. That car wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a vessel for my grief. My connection to the one person who had ever truly seen me. And when my parents took it from me, they didn't just steal a car. They took that. They took my history. They took my memories. And in that moment, I felt like I had nothing left. I didn't know how to fix that. I didn't know how to get them to understand how much it hurt. All I knew was that I wasn't going to let them take that from me. The Mustang was mine, and I wasn't going to let them have it. I didn't care what they thought. I didn't care if they tried to justify it by calling it a family decision. It wasn't. It was theft. And I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I wasn't going to let them steal what had been passed down to me. It was the only thing I had left of Grandpa. And I was going to fight for it. I didn't care how hard it was. I didn't care what it cost. I was going to make sure the Mustang came back to me, where it belonged. As the days went on, the weight of what had happened settled heavier and heavier on my chest. The Mustang was gone, and with it, a part of me. But my parents, they were acting like nothing had changed. They didn't care that I was crushed. They didn't care that I felt betrayed. What they cared about was saving face, keeping up appearances, and making sure everything looked perfect on the outside. The family's image, their reputation, was all that mattered to them. And I realized that the more I thought about it, the more I understood the game they were playing. This wasn't just about the Mustang. It was about control, about making me feel small, making me feel like I had no right to stand up for myself. They thought they could just take what they wanted, and I would fall in line, like I always had. But they were wrong. This time, I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I didn't know how to fix it, but I knew I had to do something, and that something wasn't going to be begging or pleading. That wasn't how this was going to go. But Roman and Maria weren't about to let it go so easily. I started getting texts from my mom. Her messages always so sweet on the surface, but underneath, I could feel the manipulation. "Riley, please, don't be difficult about this," she wrote. "Your father is under so much stress with the market right now. Kyle is so happy with the car. Let him have this moment. We can talk about you getting the car back in the spring." It was the same thing every time. Don't be difficult. Kyle needs it. Let him have this. It was like they thought I was some spoiled child who was throwing a tantrum over a toy. They didn't get it. They didn't understand that it wasn't just about the car. It was about everything they had taken from me, everything they had dismissed about me. I wasn't going to just sit back and let them rewrite the story. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me into thinking that I was the one in the wrong. So, I ignored her texts. But then the phone calls started. Roman would call me. His voice, all sweetness at first, like he was trying to butter me up. "Riley, we're not trying to hurt you," he'd say, his voice calm, too calm. "We just want what's best for Kyle. He's going to college. He's starting a new chapter in his life. This car will help him. We know you're a good girl. You understand that, don't you?" He always tried to spin it like I was the one who was being unreasonable, like I was the one who didn't get it. "I don't want to make a big deal out of this," he'd continue, "but you're making it harder than it has to be. You're causing a scene. Just let it go. We'll figure something out." It was always the same. First, it was, "We're just trying to help Kyle." Then it was, "You're making things harder than they need to be." And always, the implication that I was the problem, that I was the one who needed to fix it. They couldn't even begin to comprehend that they were the ones who had crossed the line. They were the ones who had stolen my car, my property. They couldn't even see it. They didn't want to. The pressure kept building. I could feel it, like a vice tightening around me. It wasn't just the Mustang anymore. It was everything. The years of being overlooked, the years of being told I wasn't enough, the years of my family prioritizing Kyle's needs over mine. And now, they were trying to get me to back down. They were trying to get me to accept what they had done and move on. It was infuriating. Every conversation felt like I was being gaslit. Every time they called, I could hear the undercurrent of guilt tripping. "Don't you want to help your brother?" they'd ask, as if I had some obligation to make Kyle's life easier. "Your family, Riley, we're all in this together." They kept saying that over and over. Family. But I was starting to realize that family, at least to them, meant something completely different. It didn't mean support. It didn't mean respect. It didn't mean understanding or love. It meant control. It meant getting what they wanted. No matter who, they had to push aside to get it. And it meant making sure I knew my place in all of it. They were trying to make me feel like I was being unreasonable for wanting what was rightfully mine. They were trying to make me feel like I was the one in the wrong for standing up for myself. I was done. I was done feeling like I wasn't enough. I was done being manipulated. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. They had taken the Mustang, but they weren't going to take my dignity. I had made my decision. I wasn't going to back down. The stakes were higher now. It wasn't just about the car. It was about making sure my parents understood that I wouldn't let them push me around anymore. I wasn't going to be their scapegoat. I wasn't going to play the role they'd cast me in. I wasn't just their daughter anymore. I was someone who had learned to stand up for herself. And they were going to learn that the hard way. The pressure was only going to build, and the tension between us was only going to increase. But I was ready. I was ready to do whatever it took to get the Mustang back and to make sure my family knew that I was not their doormat. This was my fight, and I wasn't going to lose. In the end, the Mustang was returned to me, It was sitting there in the impound lot, a little worse for wear, but still mine. The engine still had that signature hum, that deep, throaty sound that made my heart race. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as I stood there, staring at it. It was the Mustang, the one Grandpa and I had rebuilt together. And despite everything, it had made it through. When I got the car back, it was more than just reclaiming a piece of metal. It was about reclaiming my dignity. It was about standing up for myself and not letting my family's manipulation destroy me. That car was a symbol of everything I'd fought for. It was a reminder of who I was and who I was becoming. And honestly, as I sat behind the wheel and turned the key, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. It wasn't just the engine that roared to life. It was me, too. I had stood up for myself. I had fought for what was mine. And in doing so, I'd learned something about myself. I wasn't the overlooked child anymore. I wasn't the one who had to just take whatever they handed me. I was someone who could stand tall, who could make tough decisions, and who could fight for what mattered. My parents, Roman and Maria, were forced to face the consequences of their actions. The truth came out, and it wasn't pretty. They lost their standing, their jobs, and their friends. They tried to manipulate the situation, tried to make me the bad guy. But in the end, they couldn't escape the truth. And Kyle? He didn't get off lightly either. His future was put on hold, and the consequences of his actions became clear. He had to learn the hard way that actions have consequences, even when you think you're above them. As for me, I didn't drive the Mustang home right away. I drove it to the cemetery, to the place where Grandpa was buried. I parked under the old oak tree, the one he used to sit under when we'd talk about the car. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like everything was going to be okay. I wasn't just sitting in the car. I was sitting in the legacy of everything Grandpa had taught me. The Mustang wasn't just a car. It was a symbol of strength, of resilience, of standing up for yourself. And that's exactly what I did. As I sat there, listening to the engine cool, I felt a peace settle over me. I had won. I had fought for what was mine, and now I could finally move forward. My family might have broken, but I was still whole. So, as I drove away from the cemetery, I couldn't help but smile. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure: I was in control of my own life. And as the sun set, I pressed the accelerator. The Mustang roared to life beneath me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I guess that's the real lesson here. When life takes something from you, don't let it keep you down. Get up, fight back, and take back what's yours. Because in the end, you're the one who controls your own story. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this journey. Don't forget to stay tuned for more stories. And hey, if you like this one, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Until next time.